Yeah, I think we felt strongly that the name that the Alliance started with about 10 years ago was relevant at the time, and it really focused on stoves, which people really felt at that time was the most impactful way to reach the millions of people that needed to be reached. However, what we realized over the last couple of years is that the increasing emphasis on fuels and how people think about both stoves and fuels and appliances is actually incredibly important to truly reach the millions of people that we need to reach and have the impacts that we're seeking to achieve. And so we decided, after I joined about 6 months ago, to really think carefully about what the name for the Alliance should be. Did a long assessment, interviewed many people, talked to other stakeholders, and finally decided to change the name to the Clean Cooking Alliance. Removing the word stoves, mostly because we want to articulate the importance of fuels and thinking about this in the broadest sense possible. If one doesn't think about the fuels as they relate to the stoves and as they relate to different business models, we're really not creating the impact that we're seeking to achieve. And so with that, we also had the opportunity to create a new brand and some different updated language around the importance of the work that we're doing. And we felt it was important to do it now because sometimes the global community forgets how important it is to think about what needs to be done to make sure people have access to clean cooking solutions. And we feel that doing a rebrand allows us to lift that story up again and make it more a consistent storyline in the global community, which we feel is really, really important because this is such an urgent issue that simply cannot be forgotten. Yeah, it was really exciting. It happened a couple of months ago in Kigali. This was the very first ever investment forum that happened in the clean cooking sector. And so originally we were really excited and also a little worried because this is the first time and we weren't quite sure how many people we're going to attract. So we set ourselves internal targets of about 75 participants, thinking that that would already be amazing to have so many people come together to talk about what's really needed from an investment perspective to create this industry that we all know is really needed. We were just so pleasantly surprised when we realized that we had more than 200 people who participated. And more importantly, I think, they didn't just participate, they stayed for the 2 full days, were fully present, and the feedback that we received afterwards was very inspiring, as in the honesty that was really clear from the participants and the people who were on the panels was very helpful. And I think this sector and the work that we're doing is so difficult and so challenging. It's much more helpful, I think, for us as a sector to be honest about those challenges, to talk about them, and then start to think about how we can address them. And so for us as the Alliance, it was just a really important moment for us. I also think, and I say this because if we truly want to address this issue at the scale that's required, we're going to need a lot of investment to come into this sector. Some estimates are about 4 billion a year, and we're not seeing nearly enough of that right now. And so for us as sort of a voice in this sector, it's really important to bring those communities together. And we're intending to do another investment forum in 2019 and hoping to continue to do that in the next couple of years, really to make sure that those communities, the business owners and the business developers and the potential investors come together at a regular basis to learn more about new business models, new ways of financing, and different investment opportunities that we increasingly see out there. Yeah, and we do indeed hear it a lot. And I think it's really important to recognize that although we speak about clean cooking as a sector, there's many different segments within that sector, just like any other industry that that has been established and the one that we're trying to create. So I think we need to be really honest about the fact that there are indeed different stoves and different impacts that come from those stoves. So there's definitely fuel options out there that would have a much more immediate impact on health and air quality, like LPG or biogas and other technical solutions on the fuel side that we see. And we're very much in support of those. However, we do also see that increased technology and improving technology innovation for biomass and combustion specifically allows for some of those stoves to also reach more improved targets around impacts on health and impacts on our air quality. And so as an alliance, we don't pick a fuel, we don't pick a stove. We actually really believe that there is no single stove, no single fuel, no single business model that's going to address this issue at the scale that's required. And so therefore we see our role as making sure that all of those fuels are always taken into consideration. And the government at the country level are able to pick the fuels that are appropriate for their context. And so definitely we recognize that there's differences. But I think it's really important to acknowledge the fact that in any industry, in any time that you're trying to do and address an issue that is this big, there's going to be different solutions that are going to be helpful as we transition to ultimately complete access, universal access to clean cooking solutions. Yeah, I feel really privileged actually to be at the Alliance because I have backgrounds from the private sector, both from energy services as well as investments, but also worked in different NGOs. And I really feel that all of those experiences have allowed me to bring a really strong focus to addressing this issue. And so in a way, I think all of those different elements of my background, I'm now able to bring to bear in trying to address this issue at the scale that's required. And because I do speak language of business or the people who are setting up a new business, I've been in that position. I know how important it is to think about your margins. I know how important it is to have a predictable policy environment. And at the same time, I've also worked a lot on financial vehicles and investment opportunities. So I know how important it is to pitch something to a potential investor that sets the right tone and gives the investor the confidence that they're able to invest in the company that you're trying to pitch. And at the same time, I've worked a lot on the impact side. So I know sort of the importance of storytelling around making sure that people understand why we do this work, which is to make sure that nobody's life is impacted by the way they cook. And so that sort of the business side, the investment side, and the storytelling side around impacts, I think I'm really honored really to bring that to this particular position and see what I can do to help the sector move forward. Yeah, this is a big goal. Universal access, as you can imagine, is the biggest goal we can set ourselves. 2030, although it sounds far away, is actually really close. And so the Alliance is really focused in the next couple of years on thinking about scale. And what does scale actually mean, particularly in this sector and in this industry? And so increasingly, the Alliance will start to articulate business models that we see that have the potential to scale. And in our situation, I think there's a distinction that needs to be made between scaling through replicating or growing your businesses in surrounding countries, but also scaling through thinking about what it means to almost become a distributed utility. And so there really are different models that are out there that we increasingly are seeing that are going to allow the Alliance and the sector to truly reach that really quite ambitious goal of universal access in 2030. And the most important word there is to make sure that the sector grows and it continues to understand what business models means and what kind of business models can be replicated to achieve the scale that's required. At the same time, I think it's also important to acknowledge the fact that that's going to require a lot of investments. And so if that is indeed $4 billion a year, some of that is going to come from, still going to continue to come from sort of development grants, but increasingly we want to move to more commercial capital so that we're truly creating businesses that then have an exit strategy, that then actually are able to grow because they're exiting and can reinvest in another business model. So it's really about truly creating a business, which is the exciting part for the Alliance in the next couple of years. Yeah, I think it was really important for us to make sure that we have an opportunity to elevate this issue up, which is why we announced 2019 to be the year of clean cooking. We feel it's so important at a global level to make sure that policymakers and people who are investing in this space understand the impacts that making sure people have universal access to clean cooking solutions does impact people's health. It impacts the environment, it impacts climate, it impacts forestation and deforestation, watershed management. There's so many impacts that come from making sure that families around the world have access to clean cooking solutions. And we want to use the year of 2019 to consistently get that message to the different audiences that we're trying to reach. And so they include the global audiences, but they're also really going to be significant events that we're going to be hosting at the country level. So both at the countries where we're working with the governments to implement clean cooking solutions and clean cooking programs, but also at some of the governments who support some of the work that the sector is doing. And so I think it is important for everybody to understand why we do the work. And we can do that truly by communicating and increasingly telling the story of the impacts that could be achieved if families around the world have access to clean cooking solutions.